so happy to be here with you. Talk a little bit about this idea that we've been remunerating on for the past 4 months of like getting on, talking about what's happening in the world of HR and technology and helping one another and
Business.
those out
Yeah.
there figuring it out. So when you think about what we're trying to accomplish here, what comes to mind for you?
It's a great question. I love the unprompted, but really smart question. Well done. Yeah, I think it's for me, I've always been interested in connecting the business side, the people in the business side. And so when I think about this particular podcast, I look at the landscape. And you and I have been on podcasts, so we have to be nice and say nice things about them because we want to be
Yeah.
continuing to be on others, right? But we can talk trash if we want. Um, it's kind of similar format, like, oh, Teresa, and here's my biography, and here's what I've done, and maybe I have a position on something, versus like, let's grab the headlines. Like, what you and I had talked about was going through LinkedIn. Everybody now has this LinkedIn news feed. It sits on your right hand side. And I think we also went through, and it kind of is somewhat personalized, although it was very similar, some of the topics, and go through that and do it from maybe from an AI lens, maybe from a people lens, maybe both of those two things. And instead of just like pontificating or having guests, and maybe, we can have guests too, like that are specialists in certain areas or something like that. But instead of just like pontificating about ourselves, like just talk about what's going on in the world, and but just do it. Now, none of that is novel. One of my favorite podcasts is the Pivot podcast and the Prof G Markets podcast. What I like about it is like they're just talking about stuff that's happening, but from a different perspective. That one is a financial perspective, or
Right.
Scott talks about coming from a founder perspective. You and I come from an HR. You're in AI. You're doing there's tech. Like it's taking like no one does that. Like there's no one out there that does that. So why not fill the void? And my thesis is that people would listen. I don't know.
I
What are
love
your
that.
thoughts?
Yeah, I think that the convert what is missing is just real everyday conversation about it, about not a demonstration, not even just about AI, but HR as well, right? Like not a deep like introspective on theory, but just practical conversation. I love that. In fact, I'm curious because somebody did a post on LinkedIn today and there's all this conversation. Speaking of getting in the moment,
Let's go
I'm curious
right
about
into it.
your perspective because there today or yesterday, I think it was today, there was a lawsuit filed in California against Eightfold AI. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. But
I know Eightfold. No, I haven't. The prep work that was done for this. No, I know Eightfold, and I can imagine what it's about, but I don't know what's
yeah, I
happening.
so what's happening?
Is it similar to like the Workday one,
Yeah.
the recruiting one?
Yep. Yep. So it's interesting because I've seen a few, it feels like as soon as these kind of things come out, it's like we pop off on like, oh, this becomes be wary about using tools and it goes into this really kind of deep dive on fear tactics. And I don't think, necessarily the person that I read an update on, and I was like, my instinct was, it feels like working in HR, I've always learned that people can file a lawsuit for anything, even a class action, right? Like
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean there's validity to it, but the quick fire response of, oh, here's another example of what's gone wrong there's two things that come to mind for me. Number one, the expectation that AI is going to get, or any company building AI is going to get it right first time out the gate without any issues or challenges, that the expectation of perfection always strikes me as kind of funny. And we're in this space where in HR, we are more risk averse, right? So maybe we don't want to
Certainly. Yeah.
do something that's going to cause risk. And at the same time, tools like what Workday has incorporated from a recruitment standpoint, Eightfold, other recruitment tools that are trying to, I think, create if we take it from the spirit of an expectation of goodwill, a good faith effort to create something that's meaningful and helpful for HR teams who are now battling with the other tools that are launching resumes out with thousands per day, like what is the solution that can work? And the allegation against Eightfold is that they're using and scraping, which they've said they don't do, that they're scraping social media, all these different facets on the internet to create essentially a card per candidate, and that card is used to evaluate whether somebody is right for a role or not. So it's different from Workday in that it's not age discriminatory or the allegations of age discrimination. It's more, what is it, freedom of like a Fair Credit Reporting Act.
Right. Whatever the public information. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think because, and listen, but if you're watching this different, if you're listening, you won't know, but we both have backgrounds that say AI in them, right? So what's been happening is the world has been like AI, 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 and HR. It's like AI, and so any minute, and it, it's not that I'm not an expert in neuroscience, but I studied leadership with the neuroscience bent, and it's the whole fight flight response, right? Like, and this is, oh, see, like this is, hey, CEO, been like, ping me. What are we doing around AI? What are we doing around AI? Like, are we efficient? Can we reduce headcount? See, this thing is not great. Like, and I think there is on the other side, and we've seen this historically with technology, is that a lot of the founders of these technologies, there's no guardrails. Like you see it, I forgot what technology it was. Very sad story where the kid was talking with the AI and it like convinced him to commit suicide. And the mother, I'm actually part of MoMA, which is Mothers Against Media Addiction. And, it's the story of these solutions, these technologies that have these unbridled capabilities without any guardrails, and Congress and our government hasn't done anything about these things. So it's an opportunity for HR folks to go like, see, it's not as perfect as you all say. And in fact, it's really, really bad. And now there's a lawsuit. So I'm not going to use it and I need to hire 5 recruiters. So yeah,
Fun. It's so true, Anthony, because I use this story a lot in presentations around like every 2 or 3 months, there's a shift in the media hype cycle around what is the conversation we're having now, right? Sometimes it's a story, a tragic story about the young man in Miami who committed suicide, or Chicago. Then it's about the environment because that becomes part of the hype cycle. Then it's
water, about water now.
people come up to me in the food line at a conference and like,
We have no water.
water. I'm like, okay, how about let's close down all the golf courses and then we can talk about the water. But I think that, and it's not to dismiss it. There are real things to talk about, but this idea of becoming the, what are we as HR leaders looking for? Are we looking for a reason to believe or a reason not to believe? Are we looking for a reason to, retreat onto our tried and true methods of long form work to get it done? Or can we have all of these things be true at once? That yes, it's not ideal for the environment and we're doing our part to offset whatever ramifications are there. It can also be true that I was reading a study, it came up this morning, it was in Charter. They were referencing another study around the likelihood and the activation of pulling in disparate model profiles the more you get into a more kind of therapeutic conversation. So with coding, it stays very tried and true to the line it's supposed to follow. In writing, it stays really close to the line. But when you get into more therapy, psychological conversations,
Yeah.
yeah, it can deviate. And so I think part of the challenge is we've got a lot of HR leaders in our world who are in this very difficult space. You've been there, I've been there as a CPO, CHRO, trying to, put out all the fires with a stack of want tos on the side. And then there's this new thing we're supposed to just adopt and
Get
understand.
pushed on. I mean, I, I think going back to Eightfold, I think lawsuits are good. And the reason why, and that will shock folks, especially on the HR side, is that it just forces you into guardrails. Again, if you look back, a lot of these technologies, no, and some of them will have founders that are thoughtful about these. I want to, Kieran Schneider, one of my favorite people, was a founder of Textio, really thought about the technology she was developing and was really thoughtful about it and continues to be thoughtful and will call out people that aren't thoughtful. But I would say she's rare, like 1 out of 10. So the idea that a lawsuit can kind of course correct on these things, I'm all for it. And to your point, it's always the combination of the two. This is, we become so dogmatic in so many things, and it's someone I was talking to this the other day said something, and it was I always forget the saying, but I love it so much, but I forget about it. It's like, having conviction but being open to new data. Like strong convictions and some loosely held or something to that, or strong opinions loosely held. That might be it. But it's that kind of thing where it's like, hey, actually, it could be a combination of all these things. It could be, and we've never, I even have something on my shirt here. It's coffee, humans, and robots, right? Like we never talk about the coffee, by the way, but you have to have the coffee. But the idea is like it's always it's always going to be, people and human machines. Like that has always been my mantra on these things. And so you're right though, and we're being generalizing when we say all HR people or most HR people, but there is this world like you're coming up a function that was very compliance driven, where you're probably looking for the no or identifying. You were born to raise risk or identify
Or
risk, and so of course you're like, hey, once something comes up, it's like, no, that's not a good solution. And that's been challenging from a tech perspective because you don't have HR folks that are typically on the beginning of the adoption curve. They're
yeah.
usually, sort of towards the end.
How much do you think, and I'm being a little flippant here, but how much do you think the resistance is because we just don't want to hear the I told you so, or like, haha, HR did the bad thing? Like, there's so much of what we in our function is about like restriction, in some cases, compliance. And I think there's such a hesitancy because we're often in HR viewed through that lens of like restriction that
Yeah,
if we, not for all, to your point, not for all HR people, but for a lot of HR people, what I see is still the idea of asking for permission as opposed to viewing your role as equal, if nothing else, to the COO, the CFO, the CMO, and therefore not necessarily looking for permission, but driving the needs that we have within our organization and being willing to take the hit to say, look, I
yeah,
explored something. It was something that was intended to support the business function that I run in a way that's more effective, efficient, aligned with our business objectives. And I think that goes into it a lot, right? Anthony, you talk so much. And I love when you talk about
yeah,
like that having the language to align with the business objectives. And there are, I think more education on the HR side in that area where we are now able using technology to pull ourselves away from the manual work and start to prepare HR leaders for having those more strategic, robust conversations. Don't get me wrong, many of us have those, but a lot of HR leaders are still in a place of viewing their role as a servant as opposed to a leader.
right. An accelerator. I mean, I think if the accounting system you invested in doesn't function the way it does, no one really knows. Right. I think because everything we do is so widespread, I think more so, I mean, maybe IT a little bit, maybe or equal to us in term, but they've, Microsoft Office, if something does like it's been around so long, or Gmail, that, fine. It's a, for us, when we do take a stake and try to be progressive, it is company wide. Like every department is recruiting in the eightfold case. If not, even like 15.5 or whatever, like that's widespread technology. And so it is your rep. And so I understand the trepidation. I understand it because it's like, if this shit does not work, this is my brand, this is my reputation. And HR's brand is probably the only one, like, like your board or your CEO is not looking for, and maybe they are if they're really progressive in their leadership functionalities, but they're not looking for their CFO to be like warm and fuzzy with the employees, or like the employee. For us, like everyone, our performance review is like CEO, board, it's our colleagues, and it's all the employees, right? Like everything we do, every program we put out there has a critical lens to it. And it's also, everything we do is dependent on other people doing those things,
Yeah.
right? And so and you have no authority on any of those people, although people, fear HR, which I hope I've never been feared, but there's none of that. So I understand why there's a hesitation. And I understand why it's the case. And what I'd love to do is just figure out like how like a CRO goes into that budgeting meeting and fights for Salesforce, which is just incredibly expensive. It's like the highest thing ever. And I want them to go in, I want a CPO to go in and feel that same way about their HR tools, to be like, hell no, we can't get
Yeah.
rid of this.
Yeah.
Like we can't consolidate to some crappy system. Like, and so,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would love that.
Across the board, so many conversations. I was having it recently with a new client, this idea of how are we how do we view once we realize a tool, a technology will be provide an exponential support to our team. How are we approaching that desire or that request? Is it an ask? Is it a expectation plus support? I talked to my brother. He's a head of data analytics for a global company, and he talks a lot about that. You know, if our HR leaders were to come to us and say, "This is the tool that we need, and I need your support to help integrate, make sure that do you do your work, which is to ensure that there's security, ensure that none of our systems are compromised or open to compromise. But outside of that, it's not asking permission. It's directing what you need for your function and asking for the support that they can uniquely provide. But so many people I talk to are still in like, because AI can feel like it is technology, there's a lot of ambiguity around ownership and
Yeah.
who can do the ask. I would say the same thing to a marketing team. I would say the same thing about incorporating a tool like 15.5 or Harriet or Opry or whatever it is and say, these are tools that are going to support the business and every employee and the function. And here's my ROI expectation out of it in 3 months. I need your help to do XYZ instead of saying, hey, can I get XYZ? There's a different approach to the proposal of needing the technology. And I don't know, that's a part of the work that I think we could do in supporting HR leaders and understanding or answering the question of how do I do that?
Yeah. No, that's a great point. By the way, this segment has been sponsored by what was it? Opry Harriet 55.
People power AI. It's all sponsored by
People,
AI.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember I was with Zeta Interactive, which is now Zeta Global, billion-dollar company, but back then it was smushed up private equity play. And I went to the IT team and I said, we were a global company. I need a global HR system. And they're like, we're not going to host that. And this is a time when, cloud wasn't necessarily a thing. Well, it was about to be. And it wasn't necessary. I had to ask for permission because I had to. There was SaaS was not especially in HR. It wasn't really a thing at that time, and so I had to ask for their permission. And then this little startup came onto the scene, and I was so very excited for it. And it was an HR tech company, and they're like, "We're going to put your HR tech in the cloud, and we're going to make your work day a lot easier." And I was like, so I went to IT and I was like, hey, I don't need you. I have this thing called Workday and they're gonna come in and I don't, and I think they're still implementing it today. But anyway, this segment not sponsored by Workday, but it was Workday. I was the 61st customer of Workday, and it was
Where's
because
that? Here was that.
whenever they started, I don't know, whatever year they started, probably the year after.
I only ask because from what I hear on my commute into the city on NPR, Workday is an AI company, and I never knew that before. So I've
Yes,
always been
of course.
quite shocked at that affiliation, and it doesn't feel
It just might be. It just
yeah,
might be. Just might be.
it's
Well,
all
I mean,
my marketing positioning.
I also remember, and this is interesting because you would think someone with
Shit talk different technology too.
exactly, except the ones that sponsor us
Yeah.
eventually. Or maybe they like stop. It'd be like Glassdoor. We can shit talk until they pay us money and then we stop shit talking. Like
Oh
it's
my
like
god.
gangster, like we're gonna hold your brand hostage. No, kidding. So again, not sponsored by Glassdoor, this segment. Where was I going with all this? So, you would think that someone like myself, the internet, mobile, social, like I've been through all of these things. And I think that's what gives me the tough skin to be like, hey, this AI thing is this thing. Like there's never a doubt in my mind because I've been through so many of these transformations that it's like, yeah, we're going to need to bet on this or you're going to become so irrelevant. And you see it like, to your point about a company being an AI company, we're seeing the same thing. That was dot com back in the day. It was like, oh, just put a dot com
Yep.
on your company and you could raise money or you're going to be successful. And we all know that's not the case, right? Amazon clearly had everyone played out on that one, but it created Amazon, it created Google, it created all these other companies thoughtfully in a way that provides value is a key element of that versus just latching on a .ai onto your website same way .com, right? So to me, I have the ability to be like, oh, I don't want to be irrelevant because I remember the folks that didn't get involved in the internet, and like even Walmart, which was very much a brick and mortar store, had to go online. All of these, and they might have done it late, but they had to do it. So, and then then it was social. Like, who's ever going to be on that? Most of those companies went belly up. Like, they didn't jump onto the social machine. And then you have TikTok that's created out of that. Mobile was another, like, go mobile. Now you can't imagine someone without a mobile phone, right? Like, that's just it's an appendage, right? At this point, especially with teenagers, my kids are never off of that thing. For me, it's like this was just a natural, like, yeah, we have to, like, I'm not, especially at my age, I'm not becoming irrelevant. I'm too young. I have to get involved in this. And I dove head deep into it. But a lot of folks wouldn't. They're just like, hey, I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, I'm gonna qualify the .ai as a, like, I got this .ai. I was one of the first. This is still, like, stands for Albania or whatever.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
when I first got my .ai
I thought you were
back.
US based.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When I first got my .ai, it was back in 2023, and Google wouldn't even accept it as an exchange for creating a Gmail.
So you were like me in Workday. You
Yeah,
were
but I love that conversation because I think we could have many further conversations around that. The experience of the Gen Xer with the completely dynamic life we've lived around technology coming in. And I know I can't have a conversation without bringing up COVID, but I totally believe that, if we've learned anything as a function, it was the necessity to be agile through COVID, right? Like, who the
yeah,
hell knew it was happening
certainly.
any day? We had to really learn how to pivot and, cover so much. So I'm really hopeful. I continue to be hopeful that through conversations like this, whether it's about AI or it's about, you know,
Somehow I think we'll always like come into AI in some way.
our AI
I mean,
technology.
we started with Eightfold and they do a lot of AI work. So,
Yeah.
but see, like you threw out Eightfold and we had a half an hour conversation. Like, this is it. Like, this is the potential of the TNA maybe not the TNA podcast. We'll work on the name.
ANT.
A&T.
We could call it the AI Ant podcast.
Yeah, but then it's like more me. It's Anthony. I don't, you know me, I'm too
Oh, I
humble for that.
can't.
That's why I
Yeah.
said TNA because it was you first.
But I know you're too humble, but we need to capitalize on your massive following and get people to listen to us.
All right, fair.
But I love the conversation. I think there's a lot more to come to in whatever methods we can use to. I love pulling that. I literally pulled that off of in my news feed on LinkedIn today.
I
As
love
a
it.
cap for the conversation, how have you found or have you been using Pulse on ChatGPT at all? I know you said you were kind of moving a little bit more towards Gemini. I don't know if that's still the case.
Yeah, I'm all in on Gemini. Not to say ChatGPT, I don't go on there to compare, but definitely using a lot more Gemini given the context. And now with, the moves that they're making. I mean, in the UFC fight of models, Gemini is in first place, but that quickly moves. And so ChatGPT can be next. Not that I'm like, not dogmatic about it, right? So I'm not like, oh, this model is doing this. Like, for me, Gemini's in the workspace. It's easy to connect things to it, using a lot of that. So for me, it's Gemini, do a lot of research, playing a lot. I mean, the image creation functionality has just worlds of difference. Video, some of it still, it feels like image years ago, but getting better there. Research capabilities and being able to search the live internet, just so powerful. Like, it's just accelerated so many things, especially in the transition of the role into this product and product marketing role, like the ability to do competitor intel. I'm watching you. I see everything that you're doing. I actually have this thing that I asked Gemini to schedule for me every day. And I said, scrape all our competitor websites and tell me what the difference from the day before so I can see what our competitors are putting out there. Like what new releases, what are they exposing externally, their go to market. And I absorb that that's my first thing. I wake up in the morning. Now it's not fluid day to day. So I actually moved it to weekly on Fridays. So tomorrow I'll get a set. Like, what are our competitors doing? And just want to stay close to that, especially as we go to market and we're on sales calls. So to me, Gemini is is really a key for me. I'm using it quite often.
I'm obsessed with what they're doing with their labs, and
Yes,
I always said, like, if I
much though. Like, which one
no,
of these things? Like,
it's so good. No, it's so good. Like, well, Notebook itself is a whole other beast that, like, if I had an HR team in-house in a Microsoft family, I'd still require that my HR team has access to jail
yeah.
and a ChatGPT. Like, I'd still require some of that access. I was asking because this idea of using LinkedIn newsfeed when I've been finding actually having some pretty interesting things driven to me through both Notebook and through Chat's Pulse. And I just
Huh.
thought it was like a really interesting might be something you want to take a look at because it's been really kind of
And what is it? What is it? Chat
it's
T Pulse?
called Pulse.
It's called Pulse. I got to check
It's a
that out.
sidebar where there's codecs and you
Yeah,
have
I
it.
don't. No,
Oh, maybe
maybe you have fancy. You probably have the
you have
Rolls Royce. You have, I don't know, the Tesla is not that sort of luxury anymore, but
because
you have the Rolls Royce of ChatGPT.
I
So
do.
you're the one when they showed the arrow going up in terms of their $1 billion revenue. It's all Teresa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all me.
it's one user.
And then now I gotta tell you, I'm really pissed because I wanted to try a Claude Cowork, so I paid an extra, like, $80 a month or something for that, and now it's available to like, any paid
Yeah, yeah, that's well, it's so funny, you talked about some folks and I actually posted we could talk about this maybe in our next session, but I was reading Gary Marcus is one of my favorite AI pessimists because you have to read
Yeah, you do.
both the optimist and the pessimist. And he recently shared about a research study done, and maybe we can tease it for the next one. But basically, these two, I think it's Boston University legal professors, put out a pre pre publication of a study that AI could be eroding institutions and organizations. So maybe for next time. But
I love
really
that.
interesting stuff.
Great cliffhanger, Anthony. The Ant podcast, I like it.
I knew we could riff. I knew we could riff so easy.
It's alright,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take it, I'm gonna get it put it into Riverside and put it in the can. I'm
All
gonna get
right.
some sort of
All
graphic,
right. So we need a name. We need some
yeah,
stuff.
by you.
And then cadence. How many times do you want to do this?
Yeah, and, like, twice a month, is that too much?
No, I think that's good for now. And if we'll see if we get
Okay.
any traction and stuff and we'll share and see if it goes somewhere. But yeah, I like it.
I have a Buzzsprout account. I don't know if you know what that is, but Buzzsprout,
Sounds familiar.
yeah, it's like a engine to get it to all the other, like, get it posted on Apple and all this other stuff.
Oh, the podcast. Got it. Yeah. Cause
Yeah.
I have a direct Apple access that I
Yeah.
use.
So
Yeah.
it goes on
Okay.
Apple and, like, every podcast out there.
All
So
right.
let's, like, work on an async over the next week or so and get it all together, and then we'll put a little post up and
I like it. Sounds good. Awesome.
yeah, we'll get
This is the first of many. This is going to be huge.
so
I have a
excited.
feeling. I have a strong feeling. I really do. I've been wrong though.
Not this time. Not
I'll
yet.
talk
You
to you
not wrong.
soon.
All right, my
All right,
friend. Have
Teresa.
a good
Have a
one.
good night.